We're so glad that you're here for our third session of the Caregiver Training Camp. My name is Rob Fabian with Age of Central Texas. We are so glad that you are joining us for this wonderful presentation today. For those of you who are just joining us this afternoon, welcome. We're so glad that you are here. We've got some tremendous information for you today. Some very quick housekeeping. We are recording this session, and we have recorded all of the sessions today. So if for any reason you have technical issues on your side, you need to leave early, don't worry, because we're recording them. We're going to be posting them on YouTube, and we will be sending you the links to all of the sessions so that you can watch those later or share them with family and friends. We're also going to be sending you a lot of great resources, including the PowerPoint presentations from today. We're going to send you a lot of caregiver resources. We're going to send you a copy of the Caregiver Playbook and a lot of great information to help you in your caregiving journey. We're also going to send you a survey. It's an electronic survey, and it'll only take you just a couple of minutes to fill it out. But it's really important, and we hope that you will complete it because it helps us in designing these types of events for you. We want to know, what are some of the struggles that you're having as a caregiver? What are some of the topics that you would like to see a presentation on? Let us know that information so that we can find those experts for our next presentation and bring you all of that great information. Then finally, right down here at the bottom of your screen, you have a chat feature. It looks like a thought bubble, the kind that you'd see in the comic strip. Just click on that. It'll open up the chat feature, and then type in your questions today, because we have an amazing expert who's going to provide some tremendous information. And this is for you. This is why we do these events, is to help you with the information that you need. So ask those questions, because you've got the experts here today to help answer those. And we are so glad that Sarah Hyde-Williams is with us today. She is one of our very dear friends and just a wealth of amazing information. She is the owner of the Senior Living Advisors of Austin, and she has so much experience when it comes to helping caregivers and older adults in their journey. Her business helps seniors and their families to navigate the various options that are offered locally by senior housing and the healthcare industry. But she's long been a care expert and community resource. She has worked with assisted living and dementia supportive communities, along with home health and hospice care. And in her business, she helps with senior housing placement, advanced care planning, education and speaking opportunities, training, and support groups. She currently serves as the Central Texas Area Facilitator and Educator for the Lewy Body Dementia Association. She's an active member in both the National Association for Senior Advocates and National Placement and Referral Alliance. And she has just a wealth of certifications, expertise, knowledge, and is just an amazing person. So Sarah, we are so glad that you're spending your Saturday with us this morning to help us as we explore dementia caregiving. That's often an area that is very unique in its caregiving demands and very unique for the person that we're caring for. So thank you so much for joining us. I am going to turn it over to you, and then we will pop in when you're done and we will answer some questions.
Sounds great. Thank you, Rob. And for that introduction, oh my word. It's hard to think that I have, over the last 20, 25 years, done all of that. But really, at its very core, it gives me an absolute passion and a privilege to assist care partners, families working through this realm of dementia. It is my absolute love. So after the presentation is over, if you would like to reach out to me, ask me a question, I'd be more than happy to help. So welcome. So no matter where you are in your journey, whether you are just starting and this is the very first age conference you have ever been to, you're just reaching out for resources and support, welcome. You're in the right place. For those that have been on this journey for quite some time, you're adding tools to your toolkit bit by bit by bit. hoping today that we give you one more little tidbit that you can grab and you can go, ah, great idea, or let me try that and see if that works. So this path of care partnering can be very isolating. It can be very scary in working with these challenges that oftentimes we call behaviors or behavior sets, and not knowing what to do can be very overwhelming. So last year, I believe for the GPS conference, Rob asked me to speak on practical tools for dementia caregiving. And we thought what we would do for that one is communication skills, verbal as opposed to nonverbal, body language, all of that. And then my absolute favorite, I use it every day in my practice, are the 5 I'm sorries. So as Rob said earlier, if you want to go back and grab that presentation from YouTube, I do know it's on there. I sent it to a family earlier this week. So if you want practical tools, communication tools, go grab that one. Today, let me share my screen. We're going to talk about challenging behaviors. So I'm going to explain what I mean by that as soon as we get the PowerPoint up and we are ready to go. All right. So when we talk about challenging behaviors, they can be so overwhelming and so daunting that to talk that through and provide you with more tools in your toolkit, we can have a more rewarding experience than we have challenges. And that's what we are hoping for today, is to give you some really good pieces of information so that you have a lot more rewarding times with your person. So, have you ever caught yourself saying, or can you relate to any of the following? I'm just not sure what to do with my person with dementia. How about, I absolutely dread the afternoon, what we oftentimes call sundowning, that time of highly anxious times. I know it's really, really going to be rough. I dread it. I know it's coming. I don't know what to do. How about my person with dementia refuses to do anything? Many of us have that. We're going to talk that through. And how about my person with dementia follows me all around, all day? I can't get anything done. So I hear that one an awful lot as well. And then this is one of the ones I hear most often when families call me, looking for grasping at resources and supports. I am so overwhelmed and I am so incredibly burnt out. So we want to make caregiving easier and more rewarding for you. So we're going to go through a couple of ideas for you. You are in the right place. This is the session for you. If your loved one is working through some cognitive impairment, then we're really going to kind of think differently about a few things and give you a few more tools in your toolkit. So what we're going to talk about today are the 4 most common challenging behaviors. We're also going to talk about some of those questions we can ask, how we set up a routine or what that day, a typical day looks like, so that we can hopefully prevent or maybe even stop some of these challenges. And then we're going to talk through what are some of the things that we can avoid as we're working through these challenges. Okay. So our goal is to make this caregiving journey easier, more rewards rather than challenges. So know beyond anything, you are not alone in this. I do have to step back, and we're going to take a portion of this time. And what do I mean by challenging behaviors? I've used that term about 6 times already in this brief presentation. So I want to kind of think outside the box a little bit on what is a challenging behavior. What I like to refer to is not necessarily a behavior, but a response or an expression. So the term behavior has become subject to great widespread misuse. And most often it's a euphemism for violent or aggressive, harm to self or others. And that is not what I mean in any form or fashion. What I'd like to do is challenge the status quo on this. And what I mean by behavior is this response, this expression, whether or not it's communication, whether or not it's what we in the dementia world like to call an unmet need. There is a need somewhere, somehow, whether it be biological, whether it be social, whether it be environmental, or whether it be psychological. There is a need there that I cannot express. So wouldn't it be great if our person with dementia could say, hey, hun, the seam of my sock in my right shoe is really bothering my pinky toe. Could you remove my shoe and fix it for me? How many times have we heard our person with dementia express that? We don't. It could show up in 1,000 different responses or expressions, and we have to step back, say time out, and have to be the detective to figure out what is going on and how can I fix it. So let's talk through some of these unmet needs that we can identify and that we can fix. So typically when we're talking about biological unmet needs, what we're talking about first and foremost is pain. Pain is the driver of a lot of these so-called behaviors or responses or expressions that we see. We wince, they may bat at us, get away. And what they're really meaning is that hurts, stop. So pain, number one, biological unmet need. Another is medication. Have we thought that maybe we've added a new medication in the last couple of days that could be causing something? Or for one reason or another, we ran out of a medication, we didn't fill it at the pharmacy, and now they're without their carbidopa-levodopa for 3 days, and now we are really seeing a difference. Now that's an extreme. Carbidopa-levodopa is oftentimes used for rigidity and mobility issues with Parkinson's. We are not going to go 3 days without that medication, but that's an extreme that I just want to bring your attention to. So pain, number one, a medication, either we've added one or we have forgotten to give one. What about the need for sensory stimulation? Some a comforting blanket, a pat on the back. Maybe with our more advanced folks, when they are getting to the point of being nonverbal, that hand massage can be quite comforting to them. So biological. Social, some of those unmet needs could be boredom. We're just bored. We need some engagement to happen. What about seeking social interaction? My person is not here that goes to work every day, and I'm left with a caregiver that maybe doesn't know me very well or can't give me that social chit chat back and forth that I'm used to. I miss my person. The need for an element of control, right? I feel out of control. This doesn't feel right. I don't feel like I belong here. What am I supposed to do? That type thing. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. That's one of our common challenges that we have. How about our insensitivity or our inability to recognize our person's wants, wishes, and needs? We just don't understand what they're asking for. that seam in that sock is really bothering them, but they're not saying the seam in my sock is really bothering me. What they're doing is maybe kicking or trying to get that shoe off, or something is not being met there. They have a need. We need to figure it out and fix it. Environmental. This one is huge as well. Noise is another thing that we could be thinking about. Is it way too noisy, or are we not speaking loud enough? Those that are very hard of hearing over and over again, what? And it can cause some irritation. So noise, either not enough or maybe way too much. What about lighting? Harsh lighting from above, or it's not light enough. They can't see where they're going or what they're doing. What about overstimulation? What happens? We get invited to a Super Bowl party. We take our loved one living with dementia with us. They've always been a lifelong football fan. We got to go to the Super Bowl party. We've got these people over here screaming at the television. We've got these people over here having a conversation. We've got so much activity going. It's so overstimulating that very quickly they melt down. So one of the things to think about. And what about their clothing feels off? Like we talked about the seam in the sock. Their pants are wet or soiled. There's a tag in the back of their shirt that's rubbing or scratching against their back. So that's an unmet need that we can figure it out and we can fix it. The last is psychological. Feeling lonely, an immense sense of loss, highly anxious. Some of those things that if we can figure out what's going on, we can fix. Now, I say psychological at this point. I am not a huge proponent of using a medication to fix a challenging behavior. However, where my focus of practice is in dementia with Lewy bodies and Parkinson's disease dementia. As part of this disease process, we have this psychological, this depression, apathy, anxiety piece going on all the time. And if we know that and we can get ahead of it, oftentimes we can add a medication, schedule a medication with a discussion with our doctor to where we can take some of that down a notch. We can treat depression, we can treat anxiety, we can treat apathy. There's some other things that we can't treat, and therefore it takes us as the care partner really trying to be a good detective. So any questions? Rob, any comments in the chat box about an unmet need?
Not yet.
Okay.
But once again, a reminder, ask those questions as we go along and we will answer them for you.
I'm looking for questions. I always get the most phenomenal questions every time that I'm invited to share some things with you. So a very common principle in behavior management is looking for the message that an individual is communicating through their challenging behavior. All behavior has meaning, every bit. So it's our job to figure out what that meaning is. So when I say challenging behavior, what I really mean is that there is something that they are trying to convey to us that we need to be a good detective to figure it out and to fix it if we can. Okay, so here are our 4 most common. This is not an all-extensive list. However, these are the ones I see most often when families are coming to me and we're thinking this through. How can we figure this out? These 4 most common. Number 1, sundowning. So a way to describe, this is a way to describe the phenomenon of those many signs and symptoms of dementia that get worse as the day goes on. All right, very common term. It very typically happens as the sun is setting, the sun is going down, and it's in that late afternoon. So 4 or 5 years ago, I was working in a dementia supportive community, what we typically call memory care. And you could count your watch on it. Every afternoon about 3 or 3:30, one of our young ladies would practically be running up and down the halls, wringing her hands. Where are my children? I can't find my children. And she'd call them by name. Alice, Paul, where are you? I can't find you. And she was incredibly, incredibly anxious. And so through a little bit of questioning, oh, you can't find your children. Where are your children right now? Are they supposed to be home? And going through this, we got to be that good detective of pulling out all these details to where this was the time of day they got home from school. And so by reducing that anxiety, she did have a Prn Anti-Anxiety, which Prn simply means as needed. If she got anxious enough, we could use this medication to kind of knock that down and kind of relieve that for her a little bit. So through a good conversation with the doctor, we scheduled that about 2 o'clock every afternoon to reduce some of that anxiety. What we also did was we added, and what are some of our really key points right here for engagement opportunities, is that we added and we figured out that to get ready for her children in the afternoon to come home from school, she always had a fresh baked plate of cookies for them ready. So our thought process was, let's bake some cookies, be ready for them, talk through not only the process of baking the cookies, but the reminiscence of it. How does it taste, it smell? This repetitive stirring in the bowl, motion for her that she could sit and chat and stir these cookies while we baked them and we ate them. Then it moved us into another engagement opportunity and sometimes even into dinner, to where it greatly reduced that anxiety. And we were ready for that. It only lasted for a couple of months, and then she moved through that portion of that Sundowners period and onto something else. Highly important. So I love engagements. Engagements cure numerous amounts of some of these challenges when we have a good routine and we have some engagements that really keep them occupied and busy through the day with purposeful and meaningful activity. So some of these activities that could really, really assist with what we call this sundowning period are these engagements that don't require a lot of focus or brain power. We don't have to think about it. It's just a repetitive motion as well. And it always has some sort of a movement to it. So watering plants. So we know this period of some slight bit of anxiety is coming. Let's fill all the water cans. Let's find all the plants to water, maybe even go outside and water the trees, that type of thing. Watering plants is good. Folding towels for those that were homemakers. Folding towels and getting that laundry done before the children or the spouse came home from work. Cleaning surfaces, get a rag and wipe down all the surfaces. Dusting, sweeping. One of our gentlemen every afternoon would sweep the back porch. Highly, highly helpful in engaging him in that repetitive, don't even have to think about it, repetitive motion of sweeping. Where I also add at the very bottom of this list, holding something. How many of us grew up and to this day hold true to our faith? All right. So a very near and dear family Bible. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Saying that over and over again. It's repetitive. We know all the words. We can say it by heart. What about a rosary? Hail Mary, full of grace. The Lord is with you. how important to those that hold true to our faith. We can hold something, we can rub it back and forth in our hand, and we can have this repetitive chanting or singing of a song that was highly important to us. There was one woman that I worked with a couple of years ago that would get in, went to church all of her life and knew all of the hymns. And so working with her family, her daughter would start early in the afternoon with a CD of all hymns, and they would sing along. Boy, that was helpful in this period of that sundowning. So I'm going to take a breath right here, and Rob's going to jump in if anything pops up in the chat that we can talk about sundowning. Otherwise, we're going to move on to the next one.
Oh, I'm going to jump in here because we have some amazing folks who are joining us today, and all you had to do was ask, and we got lots and lots of questions, which is great. So let's tackle just a few of these very quickly. You had mentioned in your example about the person who was in the airport, and that triggered someone to ask about traveling with someone who has been recently diagnosed with dementia. Their family is going to fly on a plane in April to a family wedding. And of course, there is concern about traveling with someone who has recently been diagnosed. So what can we do to prepare for that trip?
That's a great one. Knowing their comforts and their triggers. Is a trigger noise, light, overstimulation? Because we know airports are loud, noisy, echoey places. So maybe some headphones, maybe something to try. I'm just shooting from the hip here that I've seen some things done. Earplugs, maybe, that reduce some of that noise. Some comforts, a comfortable blanket, his or her favorite clothing that maybe we can put in our hand and we can rub. It's a very tactile type thing. So comfort measures and also knowing triggers are very important in reducing some of that anxiety and making this an easier trip. Doesn't mean we'll reduce all of it, but it might reduce some of it. Helpful?
Yes, and I'll also add in here Faith Unger, who is our program director for the Caregiver U program. Her husband passed away recently. He lived with dementia for a number of years, and they would travel to go visit their children, and they would fly. And some of the suggestions that she would always share were to have some of his activities that he liked to do packed in a bag to take with. He liked to look at certain picture books, and he liked to do certain simple word puzzles. And so having those available to kind of redirect him when needed. The other thing that she said was very helpful for her was she had printed up on her computer just some little cards that says, "My husband has dementia." And whenever he might do or say something inappropriate to someone, she could just hand them that card and wouldn't embarrass either one of them or call him out for his behavior or anything like that, but just let the other person know that he doesn't really understand what he's saying or doing. And she said that was so helpful in disarming situations. So I thought that was such a great suggestion.
It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Not only is it a compassionate thing to do, it's also an education piece. Not everyone has a person living with dementia. They don't have experience in this. And so we have all grown up in these social norms. Well, that's not acceptable to do. Why are they doing that? And to hand them a card and to say, compassionately, I would ask you to at least think about this. May or may not be appropriate. However, I'm also providing a piece of education. A quick personal story. My oldest son grew up with bipolar disorder. And so we had some cards made as well, because we would have some major meltdowns in the middle of the grocery store. So to hand out a card is very helpful. I love that idea.
Yeah. Another
So.
caregiver really agrees with you on the noise canceling headphones, said they're very effective, that she uses them during fireworks time at home.
Yeah.
And that listening to music and dancing are another great way for addressing sundowning issues.
Yes, that right side of what we retain is rhythm. Rhythm and forbidden words.
Yeah.
And aren't those two fun? But rhythm is very, very important. Music. Yeah. We're going to talk about that a little bit later when we talk about some things to avoid. Yeah.
And I'm sure we're going to talk about redirecting in just a little bit, but this question has come up about recently had to take the keys away from mom, but mom constantly asks about her car.
Yeah.
And mom has dementia, and that's what she's been fixating on is, where's my car? What's car? So some suggestions when you've got an issue like that, when your care recipient is fixating on something in particular.
Oh yeah, that's number 4, repeating. Yeah, so we're definitely going to tackle that one. I hear that one a lot. So,
and then one more quick one before we move on is just the opposite, that one caregiver hates seeing her husband just staring out the window into nothingness and having trouble engaging him. So any suggestions there?
Absolutely. We're going to also talk about that when we talk about setting routines, and some of these questions to ask to draw out some opportunities for engagement that are purposeful and meaningful, that will in their eyes feel, yes, let's do that. It's a joining in. Yeah. So, all right. How about we go on to number 2? How many of us have heard this? I want to go home. Chances are, if you have been on this journey for a little while or longer, you have heard this, and maybe over and over and over again. This is more so that I want comfort, I want familiarity, and I want safety of what home represents. We in the memory care world have, for the last 5 or so years, gotten to where when we speak with families, what we will say, and it's not entirely right, it's not entirely wrong, is it's not the home they live in now or the one they've most recently lived in, it's their childhood home. So let's explore that. People can be in their own home for 30, 40, 50 years or more and say, I want to go home. I want to go home. So mom's looking for me. My mother is waiting for me. My dad is waiting for me. I'm going to get in trouble. This is not where I belong. And so really at the core, it's the environment that I find myself in does not feel friendly. It does not feel familiar, and it does not feel functional. So I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. So there's something about this space that just for one reason or another doesn't feel right. It's not comfortable, and I don't have a connection to it. So this is not the space that I want to be in right now. So what happens in the brain, we're gonna dive into the medical piece of this for just a minute, is the hippocampus on the inner portion of our brain. When this happens, it gets damaged. And so as it becomes more and more damaged, when we walk into a space, when we find ourselves in a space, we look around to the things around us, and our brain maps. It's trying to identify things in that room. What are they, first of all? And secondly, what are they used for? Third of all, what am I supposed to do here? So if we walk into a room that has a bed, that has a chair, and has a dresser, that to us with a healthy hippocampus is, that's a bed, that's a chair, and that's a dresser. That is where I sleep. That's where I rest. That's where I sit and either put my shoes on or take my shoes off. And that is a place to where I put my socks, my underwear, and my t-shirts. We walk into the bathroom and we see a shower, a toilet, and a sink with a toothbrush. Our healthy hippocampus automatically knows and has already mapped out. We know the name of what that is, we know what it's used for, and we know what we're supposed to do here. So at its core, I'm really having a hard time holding on to this timeline of my life. Where am I at this time and space? Where am I supposed to be? The memories of just what happened just before this, my inability to be logical, along with my lack of knowledge skills, and I can't communicate my needs. So some of the things that are very, very helpful is kind of repeating back to them, oh, you want to go home? And oftentimes they'll elaborate on that. Yeah, my mom is waiting for me. Oh, your mom is waiting for you. Typically, they'll elaborate a little bit more on that. Yeah, I'm supposed to be at home right now. And that draws out a conversation. But what happens if they say, oh, you want to go home? Yes, I want to go home. So some clues that could be helpful that we could ask them would be, one, do you need to do something there? Which would indicate an action item. We just don't know what we're supposed to do. Then we can draw in an engagement or an activity that we could do while we wait. Mom said that she'd be here soon. While we wait, let's get a drink or a snack or suggest something else like that. An action item that relates to what they would do or need at home. Are they thirsty? Are they hungry? Do they need to go to the bathroom? Or do they need to work? I need to fix the car. I need to tend to the plants. I need to fix dinner before everybody gets home. So an action item, do you need to do something there? Secondly, it's do you just need to get there? And oftentimes if they'll say, yes, I just need to go home. I have to go home. Then that's an emotional need. And so that tells us right there that there is something in that space that deals with a surface or a tactile or a person there that signals comfort. So what I'm really looking for is I really want to lay down in my nice, comfy brown recliner so I can feel I'm home. What about outside on the back porch in the rocking chair? That's what we did every afternoon. We rocked in the rocking chair and we drank a glass of lemonade. Or it is a nice comfy blanket that we can hold on to and have this tactile sensation. Something is happening, a need that is not being met somehow, some way, that we want that comfort, safety, and security of what home represents. Is it a space? Is it a socialness? We're always looking for those clues. So do you need to do something there, which indicates an action item, so we can do something while we're either waiting to go home or that person is coming to get us to go home? Or is it an emotional need? Do you just need to get there? Is there something at home that would provide a comfort to us? So just a couple of ideas that might be helpful in thinking through this. I want to go home. Okay, we're going to move on. Is that okay, or did I get a question?
There, I go ahead and find my unmute button. I say let's move forward. We've got some great questions, but I think we're probably going to address some of the answers in some of the upcoming information that you're going to share, and then we'll tackle all the rest of them at the end.
Gotcha. Okay. Number 3, refusals. So at its core, refusals are when someone living with dementia refuses to do something that they would have normally done before dementia, like showering, eating, taking medications, an activity that they previously enjoyed. So I oftentimes say that it's not so much a refusal as it is a non-acceptance of a certain activity or action. I do not accept that. All right. So some of these terms have gotten a bad rap, especially in the dementia world, because we use them so often and they become morphed slightly. Refusals is one of those. So it's not refused. It is, I'm not accepting the way that you either came toward me to do that or the way it was presented in one form or fashion. And so let's think through a couple of these. Our most human innate emotion and reaction is fear. And when we react to that fear, we have this human response to self-protect. No, not doing that. And so in essence, what they're meaning is, you're trying to take off my clothes, and that is not acceptable to me. It is cold in this bathroom, and there's no way I am taking off my clothes to get in that cold shower. I'm not going to eat this food because for one reason or another, I either have a delusional thought process that you're trying to poison me, and I'm self-protecting by not eating the food or taking my medications. Some of these things that could be happening to where we're getting this non-acceptance or this resistance on our communication tools from last year. We talked about this resistance. When I push, they push back. And so oftentimes it's based out of this fear component. Sometimes it's based out of we just don't understand. There's a misunderstanding somewhere. Specifically in frontotemporal dementia, we have, especially with the language variant, where we struggle with language, there's not only a difficulty with the information getting in and being processed, but we also have difficulty formulating our thoughts and feelings in words, in language on that left side portion of the temporal lobe, and we have difficulty getting it back out. So not only do we misunderstand, our person living with dementia misunderstands what we're trying to do or help them with, we as care partners misunderstand what they're trying to tell us. So oftentimes we have this non-acceptance of an activity or an action. Also, it could be a sensory issue. So is it visual? Is it tactile? Does it not feel right? It doesn't look right for one reason or another. It doesn't taste right. For one reason or another, our brain is changing our body, so our senses react differently. And no way am I doing that. I don't want it, not doing it. So if we could think outside that box of changing yogurt to applesauce, or presenting the medication in a different form. Oftentimes our medications can be crushed, or the capsules opened, or it could come in liquid form. Always a conversation with your doctor or your pharmacist, but we could present medications in a different way. We could make shower time or bathing time a much more pleasant experience if we heated up the bathroom. We showed rather than we did. Or at its very core, bathing is to clean skin. So could we think differently about bathing? And we don't have to strip naked and get in a cold shower. What we could do is take a warm, inviting washcloth, take one part of clothing off at a time, wash that clean skin, and put that piece of clothing back on. We're getting clean, but we did it in a different way. So inviting medications with their favorite drink right before their favorite meal. So let's go ahead and take our medications with our favorite milk, and then we'll eat our donut. Just an example. So sometimes we can distract during a task. We can make it a game, a song. We can sing the instructions. There is a phenomenal YouTube video out about an occupational therapist who would write simple next steps in the showering process on the tile in the shower, and they would sing it as they went. It's brilliant. The inner occupational therapy in me is really excited about that video. So maybe we can find that and share it with you as well. But a silly game, easy instructions, we're singing it through as we go. So sometimes that is helpful as well. Make it inviting and make it enjoyable. So those are some thoughts that I have about this non-acceptance of tasks or activities. Number 4, someone asked a question about this earlier, this repeated behaviors. Repeated behaviors are when a person with dementia repeats the same phrase, sound, movement, question over and over and over again. So repeating this type of behavior set by meeting the need that the behavior is meeting for them. So whether it's entertainment, whether it's comfort, whether it's soothing for them, repeating a random phrase replaced by a familiar song. I had a young lady, I call them young ladies, in a dementia care community that I worked in many moons ago, that in her advanced dementia, she had a reclining wheelchair and she was nonverbal. However, when she needed something, wanted something, there was an unmet need for her, she would pound the arm of her wheelchair. She would pound it over and over again. So what we figured out through some detective work with her family is she was a hymn singer. And so we'd start off with, Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible. So you got the benefit of my singing today. However, what we would do is start the song, and she would mouth all the words. It was ingrained in her procedural memory. And then I'd hold out my hand and she'd put her hand in mine. And so I'd hold her hand and we'd sway with the music and we'd sing. So it put away with the repeating behavior of having to pound. It was a soothing mechanism for her that we created a song and sang through that. That was helpful. So you might find that. The loved one who is constantly asking for her keys or to drive, there is a need there to be, one of the first things we ever learn as a teenager to gain our independence and our freedom is driving. That one's a tough one. So there's many tips and tricks that we can get through that. Ask a couple of questions. Would you like to, where do you want to go? Can we go for a drive? Did you want to go down the street to go to Dairy Queen to get some ice cream? Would you go with me? Or sometimes handing them the keys and letting them have a set of keys, but it's the wrong key to the car, or the car is disabled. So those are a couple of tricks that I have seen in working through that. We have a need to be independent and to go and to be, and what that represents for us is our set of car keys. So these repeating questions, phrases, movements that's comforting or represents freedom of some sort. So some engagement opportunities that can help with those repeating behavior sets are familiar songs, hymns, a couple of the saints go marching one by one, hurrah, hurrah. Some of those songs that we've always known that has a good rhythm and a beat to it. I'm late, I have to go. Are you late for something? Who's waiting on us? Just asking a few little simple questions that lead us to where that unmet need may be. Clapping or drumming. There are some phenomenal drumming circles. So if we are able to get our person to a drumming circle, or whether one comes to the dementia care community that your loved one lives in. Susie Turner, I'm going to give you a tip and trick. She leads a company called Soul Shine Rhythm, and she does drumming, and it is phenomenal in having that. But if you could have a tambourine, a drum, a big ball with some drumsticks to have that drumming as well, it soothes. And then what about a job? Were they in their previous life an accountant? And so they had papers, we could sort papers, we could have some sort of a purposeful and meaningful activity that is important to incorporate for them at that time that serves that unmet need. So hopefully that's helpful. Those are the most 4 common that I see. Setting up a routine, some questions to ask ourselves is, what did they do for work before dementia? What hobbies did they have, or what enjoyable activities did they do? Could we bring in a book if they love to travel, a big picture book? What kind of household tasks did they do? Were they a housewife, or did they cook all the meals, or did they do the laundry? My husband does all the laundry, so I'm sure at one point or another, I'll probably get him to fold some towels. But just those little things that are those repetitive things that can take that portion of that comfort, movement, purpose, and meaning in their life. So simplifying these tasks into something they can be successful at will allow them to continue to do tasks that are meaningful to them. So it's important to incorporate tasks that they find that will be productive and can increase self-esteem. So I labeled this list, the 4 common mistakes to avoid. These are not necessarily mistakes or things that we are absolutely doing wrong. Really what I meant by this is these are some things to keep in mind as we're working with our person with dementia that we want to avoid. So strong arming. While being firm at times is very, very necessary, specifically for safety issues, constantly telling our loved one what they have to do will likely increase the challenges. So aligning what your person wants to do and what needs to get done while taking more upfront time, setting everything up, lining everything up ahead of time before we introduce the task can sometimes reduce some of that anxiety for them. Tone of voice or body language, the way that we present ourselves, are we and putting our hands on our hips about here we go again. They can read that. They read the negativity in oftentimes our tone of voice, our body language. And so we talked about last time about communication techniques, verbal as opposed to nonverbal. Really important that they pick up on those types of things. And before we get so incredibly frustrated, have a timeout. I'm going to remove myself from the situation long enough to get myself together, put a smile on my face, and rethink, engage that frontal cortex and say, let's logically think this through. Can I put myself in my loved one's shoes briefly to understand where they're coming from? And then we re-engage. So watching our tone of voice and our body language is really, really important. Too many words, way too fast. come on, let's get up, let's go to the bathroom, and then we'll come back and watch TV. We'll put down that favorite movie that you want to watch. It's Gunsmoke, right? Way too many words and way too fast. As our loved one has a greater inability to understand and process language, what we really want to do is shorten that. Come on, let's go to the bathroom. Or come on. Shorten it into short, simple phrases that are easy to process, or sometimes just emotion. Come on, let's go. Sometimes can be very helpful as well, shortening the words and slowing down the cadence. So giving them at least 30 seconds to respond. And specifically with our folks with language difficulties like frontotemporal, or in abilities with fine motor skills with their tongue, such as in Parkinson's or Parkinson's disease dementia, two sides of the same coin with Lewy body. Oftentimes 90 seconds is often what we need to give them. When I give my Alzheimer's disease and dementia care seminars and we talk this through, oftentimes I will time this. I'll start my clock and we'll sit there for 90 seconds. That is a really long time. So having that and providing that time and space for them to process your words, think it through, get their response, and verbalize it back before we go on to another action is highly, highly helpful. So also the last is fixing too many things for your person, doing too much for them. So this is so easy to do when their ability levels change. And as we are learning what is and isn't safe for them to do any longer. However, this takes away agency. The more we do, I'm going to go to the next slide, my favorite absolute phrase, what you do for me, you take from me. It's a Marie Montessori principle. We've oftentimes heard of this as it relates to children. I also hold a certification in Montessori as it relates to dementia care. Brilliant thought process as we're incorporating some of these ideals from Montessori into dementia care. And so what we want our loved one to do is do for themselves for as long as they can within their abilities. Dignity, respect, and equality at all times. No, building upon those things that they still have the ability to do and can do for themselves. That is called agency. What we think of as independence or autonomy. And so we want them to allow, keep doing these things that they've always done and avoid arguments. I can do it myself. Absolutely. I'm so sorry. And let them do it for themselves. So the only way that most times we step in is when it's a safety issue. The rest, we let it go. We let it go. So what you do for me, you take from me. So that is all I've got. I know there's probably 1,000 questions if we have time. Hopefully, Rob, we've left time for that.
We have left time, yes. We think it's very important that we answer some of these great questions. One question is kind of, the opposite of repetitive, and that is apathy. When your care recipient is just apathetic about everything. We mentioned getting them involved. What are some good ways of engaging them?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think this question came up earlier and I was going to address that and did not. Those 3 questions that we asked, what hobbies, what were their work, what did they enjoy? Apathy is one of the big components, that psychological component, that mood dysfunction that we oftentimes see in dementia with Lewy bodies and Parkinson's disease dementia. We can treat that, depression, apathy, anxiety, we can treat that. So a really good discussion with your doctor. However, We do want to figure out whether it's a lack of initiation, they don't know what to do or how to do it, or it really, they could care less other than sitting in their recliner and watching Gunsmoke all day, or CNN or Fox News. It's this, I just don't care. So what do they care about? Is it that we sit together and watch a favorite TV show? Is it they were a dancer all their life and we put some music on and we silly dance? It may take them a minute or so to get into the rhythm. What was it that did engage them? Were you guys big travel buffs? And to go back through old photo albums and do some reminiscent and engage that way. There's often something that gave them purpose and meaning in their life that we can, in essence, in this moment of time, we can recreate.
You mentioned Lewy body dementia, and we had a question specific to that about the drug Aricept and whether that is something that is appropriate or recommended for Lewy body dementia.
So I want to give a disclaimer. People ask me about medications all the time, and I always have to wrap it in the framework of always ask your doctor. So but I do say that typically Aricept and Namenda are very highly used for Alzheimer's disease. They're ineffective for frontotemporal. They are typically used in the very, very early stages of what we call dementia with Lewy bodies or Parkinson's disease dementia. But at a certain point, typically in those moderate stages, we see them discontinued because we don't see them useful. One of the medications that is highly effective through advanced stages of dementia with Lewy bodies is Exelon, which comes as a patch. And so typically when I am looking at clinicals of a person who has been diagnosed with dementia with Lewy bodies, 9 times out of 10, and they're in that moderate stage, we see Aricept and Namenda have gone by the wayside. We see Exelon has been started. So just in my observations, what I typically see most often.
And somewhat related to that, one of the caregivers is asking what signs of dementia she should look for in her daughter. Her daughter has a traumatic brain injury, and that the doctors have been giving her daughter medication for what she is assuming is to avoid or help for the onset of dementia. And so what should she be watching for someone who has a traumatic brain injury?
That is a great, great question. It really depends on what part of the brain was injured, and really what part, where that injury lies is going to dictate what they're going to have challenges with. So call me and we can talk it through. I am not an absolute brain expert, but knowing where that injury was in the brain, we can typically indicate those early stages or where those inabilities are. But it really depends on what part was injured, whether it be that front, that sensory motor up in the parietal, occipital across the back, ear to ear. There's certain situations, whether language, sensory, visual, judgment, impulsivity, all of that depends on where it was injured, if that helps.
We've got a few questions here about some specific behaviors. One of our caregivers says that my father has been biting his lips a lot recently. Any ideas on what that might mean?
Typically, when we see someone who is doing some sort of mouth gesture, licking our lips, biting our lip, biting our tongue, rubbing the side of our mouth, typically means that there's an oral sensation, a need that needs to be met there. a lollipop. If they can handle a piece of hard candy like a peppermint or a butterscotch, something that gives them that soothing, sucking, oral sensation. We see that an awful lot. I don't know if that's specifically what that issue may be, but that's typically what we see.
Excellent. Also related, one caregiver says, my husband sometimes accuses me of hurting him. If a fingernail grazes his skin, he gets upset.
Yeah.
And, you know, I know related to this, my aunt who had developed dementia, that anytime you would just touch her, you know, she would start crying and howling. Just the lightest of pressure she would behave as if, you know, you had smacked her or hit her. What is that in relation to dementia, and how do we work with that?
Very typical also those that have a non-acceptance of showering, because the water hitting their body actually hurts. It is painful to them. So typically what we see is this parietal zone. If you put your hands on top of your head, right above your ears, that is that sensory motor portion of our brain. It's called the parietal zone. And that's what indicates tactile sensations, those things that we feel or touch, and it really can be painful. Sometimes I've seen certain medications, and I'm going to avoid naming a certain couple of medications I've seen, but there are certain medications that can be helpful, that can relieve those pins and needles or that sensation that something is really greatly hurting. We just have to be really sensitive to that.
Another caregiver says that my partner says he's tired most of the time. And another one says that whenever I'm speaking with my care recipient, they yawn all the time as if they're bored with me. So how would we address someone who is constantly tired? I guess it goes also with our question about someone who's apathetic.
Well, I would question. I've got 1,000 questions. I'd love to chat with you, whoever put this question out there. But knowing the type of dementia they have, saying dementia is kind of like saying cancer. Where is it? What's the prognosis? What's the treatment? How are we going to care for this person? So throwing out dementia, I would have 1,000 different questions. What type of dementia is it? And my knowledge of background really deeply is, I keep coming back to this, is Lewy body and Parkinson's. But an awful lot of the time with this disease process, they're going through this REM sleep behavior disorder. Their body is not resting. Through rapid eye movement sleep, our brain is kind of like a computer. It reboots. It takes all the gunk out of it and it removes it. So if we're not getting restful, restorative sleep at night, we have excessive sleepiness during the day, in which we are going to be yawning, inattentive, apathy, a lot of this that we see during the day, that we're quite bored. So a good discussion with your doctor about, have we pinpointed the type of dementia? Is there anything that we can do about getting restful, restorative sleep at night? And then also I might suggest a really good engagement opportunities during the day that could engage and wear them out, in essence, where they sleep better at night. Just a few of my thoughts.
And those are fantastic. We've got just a few more here questions that we will go through real quick. One of our caregivers says that mom is very independent, and when I ask her if she's okay or if there's something that she needs, she says, I'm a big girl and I can take care of myself. She's really rude and angry, which is not mom's normal response. The caregiver's wondering, is there a better way for me to ask mom if she needs anything?
With certain dementias, personality changes. She could be going through so many different emotions. Is there a sense of loss there? Does mom feel like we're doing too much for her and we need to back off? Maybe some different questions, instead of asking, are you okay, would be, I'm going to the kitchen to get a glass of water. May I get you one as well? Or specific questions that, hey, I'm going to do this. Would you like that as well? Or reading her body language in, you really look tired. Is it time to rest? Or reading those physical and those non-expressive, those nonverbal cues that something else could be going on. And so we ask a few more questions. Asking if you're okay, if you're all right, oftentimes is such a broad question that they don't know quite how to answer it. So I'd have to think on that one a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I was just remembering another presentation that we did a few years ago where the presenter noted that a lot of times with dementia that you have to be really simplistic in your questions. And so you ask an A or B question. It's not, Dad, what do you want to wear today? Because that's too broad. That's too much to try to understand. And so, yeah, they're going to come back with something short and snappy because they're going to, we talk about this all the time, a lot of the fight or flight. We go to lizard brain and we just respond and it doesn't come out the way we intended, but this is all that I can get out right now. And so instead, the question, instead of, Dad, what would you like to wear today, is, Dad, would you like to wear your green shirt or your red shirt? And that simplifies the response for them. And so along the same lines of, do you need anything? Well, that is so broad, I agree, Mom, I'm going to get a glass of water. Would you like a glass of water also? Helps to give them the options for their answer, and they don't have to try to come up with all of it.
We're being good detectives. So if they're licking their lips or acting like they're thirsty, water.
Yeah.
Or wincing or sitting, in their chair, they've got to go to the bathroom. So we have to see those little cues for what they are and ask specific questions. Yes.
Yeah. Another of our caregivers says, my husband says I'm terrible mean when I'm trying to help them. And I know that we get this question all the time in our support groups is, how do I handle the mean, rude comments? Because they do start wearing you down after a while. Mm-hmm. Sarah, do you mind just quickly going over the I'm sorries?
Oh my word. In my head, one that I'm absolutely, that I love is when they're really struggling is, I'm so sorry, this is hard. This is so hard. Every now and then when we overdo, or they think in some essence that I can do it myself, I'm not a child. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to treat you like a child. Those are a couple of them that I can think of off the top of my head. We can absolutely get those to you. Those are a couple. When we have, in essence, we can put ourselves in their shoes and we can say, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to overdo or do it for you. I didn't mean to treat you as a child. I'm sorry this is incredibly hard for you. I'm sorry you're having great difficulty getting that word out. So reframing it from what you see as the difficulty, and if you don't have it right, they'll correct you.
Yeah. And what we're doing in that situation is that we're simply validating the other person.
We're validating.
Yeah. We're not putting ourselves in a position of we were wrong. All we're doing
Yes.
is we are telling the other person, I validate your feelings. I validate what this situation is for you.
What they may be feeling. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. We've got two more quick questions here. One of them says that their family member repeatedly wants to move and put the house up for sale. And they're not really sure what to do next. They just recently received the dementia diagnosis, and they're not ready to move, but don't know really how to handle this type of response.
Mm-hmm. Is it a male or a female that wants to do this?
We don't know
We don't know.
the question.
Okay.
Yeah.
So oftentimes in the generation of World War II, the men typically handle the household finances. Right, wrong, or indifferent, it's just a generational thing. And so I'm wondering, gosh, I've got 1,000 questions. I'd love to ask questions to kind of get down to the meat of it. There's more there. There is a need there. And it makes me wonder if this is a new diagnosis, if it is a gentleman and he thinks in some form or fashion that he needs to put his affairs in order.
Well, since we're starting to run short on time, I'm going to suggest that this person send you an email, and then y'all can discuss it, because this, as we said, some of these are very personal and very specific questions, and we want to make sure that we provide you with those answers. That's why we're here. But sometimes it takes a little more discussion than we can do just through a chat. So Sarah has said that she is willing to take your questions and help you. So let's take advantage of that. One last question, Sarah, and I'm going to lean into your experience with end of life here. We have a young mom who's a family care partner who keeps being awakened by her mom, who lived with dementia, middle of the night, and has this need to go and check and make sure that mom is still okay. Mom has passed away, and this person is still feeling their caregiving need. Their caregiving journey is still continuing, even though the person they've cared for is no longer with us. How do you adapt as a caregiver? Because this is going to happen to every single one of us. When our person is finally at rest, how do we change ourselves mentally from being the caregiver, which is our primary role right now, to being ourselves again?
Oh, that is so hard. Whoever asked that question, my heart is with you. I think that is the hardest thing that we have to work through, is that we're not ready for this to be over. We're not ready in our heart to say those final goodbyes. Although we've had this ambiguous loss for so long, we know it's going to happen. When it does happen, we're not ready for it. And there's so many things that coulda, shoulda, woulda said or done, or a self-protection mode. We are now, for lack of a better term, still parenting our parent. And it's that love. Know that through the course of grief, and allow yourself to grieve, that we are still working through that we are going to have to come to the other side, to where we know that what we did and who we are is enough. There are so many phenomenal books and resources and end-of-life doulas, and so many folks out there in the in this industry that are here to help and to serve. I'm sure Age of Central Texas has some of those resources. If you'd like to reach out to me, I have a phenomenal person that works an awful lot with end of life as well. But know that what you did was what mom needed, and you are enough. You did enough.
And we had a wonderful presentation on this very subject during one of our recent Striking a Balance conferences. And that recording is on the AGE YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search for Age of Central Texas, and it'll bring up all of our videos from our conferences in the past and all of our presentations. And there's a wonderful presentation there discussing this very subject. Sarah, I want to thank you so very much for joining us today. This is a lot of great information. We know that this is caregiving for someone who has dementia is its own very trying animal at sometimes. And it can be very confusing as our journey changes and our loved ones' abilities change. But having these tools is so helpful, and we so appreciate you taking the time today to spend some time to help walk us through these issues so that we're a little better armed for when that time comes for us.
My pleasure. Thank you.